Portland-based metal band Agalloch are getting ready to release their new album on November 23rd. I had the honor of interviewing Don Anderson as he filled me in on their new album, Marrow of the Spirit. So let's talk the new album, Marrow of the Spirit. What would you say the differences are in the new album's sound compared to Ashes Against the Grain and previous Agalloch releases?
First and foremost, although I think we can all really stand by the songwriting, songs on Ashes Against the Grain, over time we grew really critical of its, what we felt was overly produced, a little too polished of an approach. Spent a lot of time using amp simulators and a lot of heavy editing, and we wanted to have and I don't want to use the word raw, because I think nowadays when people say raw, they might actually be meaning real. And so we really wanted to get back to a more real sound and get into a studio where we could straight up mic a whole wall of amplifiers, record it very loud.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't do it in the previous studio. So already the production is much more, in my terms, real. And we try to not, because Pro Tools allows so much microscopic editing that I kind of feel like if there wasn't such editing capability due to Pro Tools, there's a lot of things that would never have even been understood as mistakes or whatever, what we might call human element, because it's able to magnify things so much.
Right.
So we kind of told ourselves not obsess over too much. Like for example, there's some guitar parts where me and John might have a different sense of timing in terms of accents on chords. They're not necessarily off time, but it sounds like two guys playing guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little nerve-wracking at first because we're not used to that. And the engineer, Steven, was like, hey, that sounds like a real band playing.
Yeah.
That was real eye-opening for us. So those are I think the real significant differences.
Cool. So, was it more difficult recording analog versus digital, or was it a pretty easy transfer?
Luckily the engineer is the one always with the recording, so that's his thing. He's definitely skilled at that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find it, but recording with, we were very particular, as was the engineer, with using the right guitar, even the right pick size or, thickness, the right gauge of strings. We literally had like a wall of different amps that we would just go through. So, there was a lot more time consuming than dialing up a sound like you might with like a pod.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of times where I'd just be playing the same riff over and over again while Steven would run out into the room and twiddle with knobs and plug in different things, try different speakers. It was a kind of mad scientist type of approach.
That's cool.
But that's definitely Steven's skill.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I don't know if it was challenging for him. That's definitely his craft.
Right.
I think we're losing the concept of the engineer as an artist. Recording is a real craft now because there's so much ease with software now and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature.
So, what song do you think turned out the best on the new album? What's your personal favorite to play and listen to?
I'm really impressed with Ghost of Midwinter Fires. I'm really impressed with the delay sound we got. I was kind of joking with John because we were long-time Fields of Nephilim fans. A lot of those parts on that song, I'm just like, man, Nephilim wishes they could write that. We felt like we could finally written something that sounds totally like Fields of the Nephilim.
Mm.
It just seemed like a song that kind of nicely bridges the classic Pale Folklore sound, which was total Fields of Nephilim worship, but with a modern Agalloch sound. It's very melodic, but also has a bit of black metal to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the verse is one of my favorite things they've ever done because, it's basically a swing beat, which was something we never would have thought we would have to do. But if you listen, the drums are kind of a swinging thing, and it was very difficult to break out of the rigidity of metal to kind of loosen up.
Yeah.
So I like that song a lot.
Yeah, it is very good. So for the intro for the album, They Escape the Weight of Darkness, you have kind of like an ambient soundscape with like cello going on.
Right.
Who played the cello on that part?
That's Jackie Perez Grotz. She is kind of I want to say someone's a session musician, but she definitely has guested on a number of records, including Neurosis, Sunder, Ludacra. Her main band is Bracion, or kind of a proggy three-piece, kind of like Crimson, like King Crimson meets Dead Boon Zenda or something. I'm a big fan of theirs, and a big fan of her work. She also plays in Giant Squid. Used to be in Amber Asylum, so she's got quite a resume, and she's a good friend of mine, and I'm just a fan of her work. So we've always wanted to use, we've always liked cellos, and she seemed like the perfect person to tap.
There's a very cool contrast from that intro. I mean, listening to that, and then it goes right into the second track. You know, that pretty much the most intense Agalloch song I've ever heard. So that's a really cool contrast, I thought.
Yeah, we definitely, it was very intentional. We felt there was no other way to do it.
Yeah.
We're thinking about, should we do some weird crescendo on the cello, or just blunt? And as you can tell, we went blunt.
Mm-hmm.
Shock.
So how would you say Agalloch's sound has progressed throughout the years, and what influences do you think particularly show up the most on Marrow of the Spirit?
I mean, I really think this record is kind of a nice, uses the lessons we've learned with regards to like songwriting and performance of the last three records. I feel like this album is definitely more cohesive than, say, like The Mantle, which was a real exploratory album. I mean, we were sort of exploring all kinds of different genres and moods, and had a lot of non-metal influences on that record. I feel like this record really, we tried very, very hard not to have too many influences, and if that's somewhat impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I can say that we were more influenced by ourselves, you know, thinking about where we came from.
Right.
We knew we didn't want to repeat anything. We also had, you know, 14 years to look back on and sort of pick and choose from things that we liked that worked, and then just trying to better them, things that didn't work. So in many ways, it's a really self-reflective record, I think, which I think everybody has to go through once they hit record number 4. You know, you have a lot to look back on.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's the main thing.
Cool. So, in the studio this time for Marrow of the Spirit, you had your permanent drummer now, Asaph Decker, who did the drums for this album. In contrast, I think John did the drums for the previous albums.
John did all the drums for Till Folklore, The Mantle, and then John did the drums for Not Like the Waves and Falling Snow on Ashes, and then the rest of those songs were done by Chris.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. So how was working in the studio this time with your drummer compared to John doing the tracks?
Well, I mean, John's like, you know, something of a visionary. He kind of has the bigger picture. And so it was easier with John in one sense because he knew exactly what he wanted. Although one thing I've always sort of pushed for was to, okay, you know what you want, but let's remain open to what other people will bring. So I was very encouraging of Aesop to bring in his influences and what he would do on a particular part. Of course, there were some parts that John had a very particular timing or tempo. But it was nice to have another collaborative voice. Agalloch, even though a lot of it pretty much starts with John's basic skeleton, I mean, it's a pretty collaborative band. And we write all our own parts, and there's, you know, we negotiate with parts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to have another person, because Aesop really understands where we're coming from, has the same musical background as we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was very nice. There's just a lot less stress on John. I mean,
yeah.
I think you do drums and guitars and vocals, and the design layout is quite a tall order.
Yeah. So what's the songwriting process like? If I understand correctly, you guys live separately from each other.
Yeah.
So what's
currently we do.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be fixed soon.
Yeah. So,
but for a while, for most of this record, Jason was in Milwaukee, and I've been in Seattle for 4 years.
mm-hmm.
John's still in Portland, and of course Aesop's in San Francisco.